And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie. That is Zach. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything balls every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on iTunes, Spotify, Apple, Spotify, and rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And we are finally back on a Monday because the schedule worked out right. We just got done with the Tennessee baseball game. Balls are moving on. Got another game ahead of them in Omaha. We're going to talk about it. But go over there and subscribe so that you can listen to our shows on Mondays. But speaking of Mondays, that's when we go live and record this show on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. And if you go over there and subscribe there, you can be a part of the show when we go live because it'll notify you if you hit the little notification bell on the channel. It'll notify you when we go live. And then you can come drop in here, comment on the show, and we'll interact with the comments because we love doing that. And then you're literally in the show. What could be more fun than that? At Charlie_Burrs, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, A2ZSports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville. Wherever you are looking for us, we can be found there on the internet. All right. Obviously, we are broadcasting this right after Tennessee just beat Stanford. Came back from 4 runs down yet again and beat the Stanford Cardinal, beat the Pine Trees. And man, it was a wild game. We're obviously going to talk about it, but I'll start with this, Zach. The real story out of Omaha this week, frankly, is this Jello shot. I would call it scandal, frankly, because every year there is this Jello shot competition in Omaha at this restaurant. Honestly, I don't know what it's called. That's poor marketing on their part that they don't put their name in like every tweet. But
Rocco's,
whatever.
Rocco's.
There you go. There's free advertising for those boys.
I saw a tweet earlier. That's the only reason.
But they do this Jello shot competition where it's every team's fan base ranked by how many Jello shots they buy. LSU bought 22,000, and you go, what? 22,000? How did that even work? And turns out it didn't work because it was one guy that bought them all. And I ask you this, Zach, to start out, fair or foul, should it count when one dude buys all the drinks like that? I say no. I say nay. That's fraud. That is Jello shot competition fraud.
I think it's kind of like the replay review in baseball when you still second base and you're clearly safe, but they review it and your hand came off for a split second and they call you out. It's not in the spirit of the rule. It's not what the rule's for. It feels like this is not in the spirit of the competition, but it would technically be acceptable because you're making a purchase. I don't know if there's any official rules for this Jello shot. I think it's foul. I don't love it, but that's kind of hard to it's kind of like a loophole, I guess you'd say.
I mean, technically, LSU fans did buy 22,000. It was just like 15,000 by one guy.
LSU fans were always going to win that competition. That's
Probably
kind of their thing down there in Baton Rouge. They run out of beer every time there's a neutral site game or alcohol. So not really surprised that they're in the lead. Tennessee's pretty far behind, I believe. And Wake Forest, a small school, is having a good showing in that challenge. Kind of surprising. Maybe it's because they haven't been there in a while. A lot of fans went out there.
I think there was an element that LSU fans took over the bar. If you go to the SEC basketball tournament ever, you know how Kentucky fans are. They ascend upon the place like a plague of locusts, and it's horrendous. And they just take over whole restaurants. I bet it's like that.
Probably.
But then, at the same time, it's just one guy being like, everybody gets a shot. And he's probably buying shots that are going to Tennessee fans. So shouldn't it was drank by Tennessee fans. So it should go to them.
Yeah, that's how the rule should really be, I guess, competition.
Exactly.
Did you see Stanford hadn't even broke 1,000 last time I saw? And they definitely won't now because they're going home.
It really made sense that Tennessee beat Stanford today because Vandy really gets called a lot the Harvard of the South, the Stanford of the South. So in some sense, I guess you could consider, I've seen people call, I saw somebody today on Twitter, I don't remember who it was, but they called Stanford the West Coast Vandy. So it makes plenty of sense The Tennessee goes 3-0 against Vandy during the regular season, then goes 1-0 against West Coast Vandy during the postseason. So, but we're going to talk about that game and what comes after that game right after I tell you about our first amazing sponsor today. Got a little bit of a weird one here. So this is Omaha Steaks, and for one more day, this is it. You gotta do this today. You got the Father's Day promotion is still going on. Father's Day obviously was Sunday, yesterday, but the promotion is still going on through today, Monday. And the truth is, dads want steak. When you give your dad perfectly aged, no so tender steaks, you're not just giving him the best meal of his life, but also the chance to grill them up and share the moment with you. For a limited time, go to omahasteaks.com and enter the code word VOLS. And I'm talking a limited time, as I just said, just for today. And then we're going to have a new promo tomorrow. Type VOLS, VOLS, into the search bar. You'll be able to order Dad's favorite gift package for just $99.99. And you get 8 free Omaha Steaks burgers with this order. It's crazy. Here's what comes with this thing: 4 bacon wrap fillets, 4 premium air chilled chicken breast, 4 boneless pork chops, 4 gourmet jumbo franks, 4 made from scratch caramel tartlets, Omaha Steak seasoning, and then those 8 Omaha Steaks burgers. And it is just $99.99, folks. It's a ridiculous deal. Go get it right now. Keyword falls into the search bar, VOLS. Gifting is easy. Dads want steak, and Omaha Steak isn't just steak. It is the best steak of your life. Guaranteed. Don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com. Type in Vols into the search bar. That is omahasteaks.com, keyword Vols. Go get it now until tomorrow when a new promo starts. But it's all the more. Frankly, it's a borderline emergency here. Go get yourself this deal because it's an amazing deal. All right. Now, you came into this game having lost to LSU, and we haven't been on since the LSU game happened. It was 2 days ago. And in that LSU game, you just faced the best pitcher in America. You faced Paul Skeens. The dude was superhuman. And he just dealed to Tennessee that whole game. Tennessee had nothing until he went out, and then Tennessee was actually mashing against the dude finally in the 8th inning. They came after him. But it wasn't enough. Too little, too late. And so you move on to play Stanford. Now, did you have any thoughts on that LSU game first? We're going to talk about LSU more here in a minute, but any on that first game, Zach?
No, you just ran into a guy that might be the number 1, number 2 pick in the MLB draft, later this summer. That's going to happen. He was on. He had good stuff. There wasn't a lot of mistakes to take advantage of. They were able to get a few hits off of him there. I think that he scattered 5 hits over almost 8 innings. They got 2 runs that got charged to him. I think some of the base runners he left on base, but that's just a tough matchup. It was a bad draw for Tennessee. Ending up with Stanford, who can hit. You saw that early in the game today, and then Wake Forest, number 1 most of the season. LSU, the other team that's been number 1, to end up kind of in that draw. It was unfortunate for Tennessee, but if you can, get past Wake or LSU, whoever you have to play tomorrow night, and kind of keep advancing, make it out of this thing, you like your chances because you felt like you've beat the best teams in the field at that point. But that's obviously getting ahead of ourselves a bit. The LSU game, tough to lose that first game, because then you can't lose again. You got to go win out to win it all. It's a very tough path to have to go back through the losers bracket like that. But it was kind of what I expected, just going up against Skeens. It's just, you got to kind of have a special night and some things go your way, and they just didn't go Tennessee's way. They didn't have luck on their side that they needed to beat a guy like that. Absolutely.
It was brutal to watch. We were kind of, you got into like that 6th, 7th inning, and you're like, yeah, this one's over. just wasn't coming together. LSU kept adding runs. So that takes us to this game against Stanford.
I did like the way they continued to kind of fight to stay in that game and to not let it get away. It showed you the character of the team. It just, there's only so much fighting you can do. You can't will yourself to win a baseball game.
You put up 3 runs late, and that's more than nothing. I'll say that much. But then you move on to the Stanford game, and Dollander is your starting pitcher after Andrew Lindsay gave an admirable effort against LSU. It just wasn't. It's almost nothing was going to be enough there in that game. But so Dollander starts, and it's just rough, and it kind of continued a trend from all season. The Dolander, he just hasn't been the dude that was kind of advertised in the preseason. This is a different conversation. Ultimately, if this ends up being the last game that he ever played at Tennessee, it's probably a mistake that he came back. If we're being 100% honest about that situation, he was kind of a presumed first round, really, really high draft. And he's probably still going to be a first round guy, but really high draft pick, and then just had a really rough season. And that might end up being the capper if Tennessee doesn't win tomorrow. And that's tough. You hate it for that kid because he has been amazing in so many spots, and he deserves every ounce of credit for that, and has been so good. He was so good in the series against Southern Miss last week, and I'm glad that he got that spot in the NCAA tournament on the way out the door here. But yeah, man, he was just getting rolled against Stanford, and then Tennessee was getting stuff going. So we didn't even say this. So Tennessee had to go from Skeens to play the number one dude in America in strikeouts to play the number two dude in America in strikeouts with Stanford. It was obviously clear this kid was not as good as Skeens. Also, he was absolutely worn ragged, and you could tell. I mean, the announcers were kind of talking about it. They were like, he is just not throwing what he normally throws in this game. And Tennessee was kind of raking on him from the very beginning. Got a lot of hits against this kid and then finally broke it open. But it was an admirable effort by Stanford's pitcher, but just ultimately not enough. Tennessee puts up 6 runs between him and the next guy, but they didn't put up 6 runs until they were down by 4 runs. And I don't know what it is with this Tennessee team in the postseason getting down by 4 runs. I guess against Clemson, it was 4-1. They didn't get down by full 4 runs, but it's 3. But down 4 runs in the second game against Southern Miss, down 4 runs today against Stanford, and then they just come storming back. They got that resolve. They got that fight. They just don't give up. And they were chipping away. They were chipping away when you really think about it. Now, you look at what Zach and I were texting each other. There was no talk of chipping away in those first few innings. It was, it's been a nice season. That's a tough way to go out, but at least it was fun a little bit there. And then Tennessee said not today, and they came back. But I mean, what did you think about this one overall, Zach?
You kind of had that feeling early in the game that Tennessee was going to break through against that kid because, like you said, they were putting the ball in play, they were hitting the ball hard, they were having some hits fall, they just couldn't string together enough hits to push some runs across the plate. And then when Stanford got up 4-0, it's like, okay, elimination game. You lose, it's done. Had this feeling in the Southern Miss game. They came back unexpectedly. Does it happen again? I mean, it didn't really feel like it was going to, just because how many times can you do it? I mean, that's something that you just can't make happen. And then when it did happen, when they tied the game, I felt pretty confident they were going to win. I didn't think at that point, especially with Chase Burns in the game, when you tied the game and you got their starter out, you've got Chase Burns in, then it was advantage Tennessee the rest of the way. And that's exactly how it played out. Like you would think it would play out on paper is what happened. They were able to push across 2 more runs to take the lead, and then Burns shut it down. I mean, he's been on a heck of a stretch here lately. It's been insane to watch.
Chase Burns is, I tweeted this, Chase Burns is a dog. He is what the great Dick Vitale would refer to as a primetime player, a PT peer. He's a PT peer, baby. I mean, dude, there's just something about this kid in that reliever spot. Because he was genuinely really struggling as a starter earlier in this season. Before that, it was whatever happened in that Arkansas sweep. That was that and the Vandy, Tennessee sweeping Vandy. Whatever happened in that 2 weeks just turned this whole thing around. Burns gets taken off that weekend rotation. He becomes a reliever, and he is a killer. Absolutely lights out in that spot. And it just, I don't know if it was the kind of getting called out and getting demoted that really motivated him, if it was just purely his mentality and the way that he plays ball just fits better in that spot. Whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, they just hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, I mean, he has the look of a future MLB, late inning closer, maybe
Yeah.
setup guy, whatever you want to call it. The guy comes in the eighth, ninth inning in a pressure situation, high leverage type of guy. That's who you want out there because he wants the ball in his hands. He wants those situations, and you can see how much it means to him when he gets out of those situations. I mean, he has the right mindset to be a reliever, closer at the next level. You got to kind of be a little bit crazy. And he kind of is. I mean, you saw him when he walked off the mound the other night, and was it Saturday night in that game? Was it Saturday night? Yeah. When he walked off the mound there, he was just full of emotion, as much emotion as you've ever seen in a College World Series game, and it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch him pitch, and I can't wait to see what he does, after he leaves Tennessee. But that's certainly a huge weapon to have moving forward in this College World Series.
It really did feel like when Tennessee tied the game at 4 and Burns was in, you went there was a little bit of a calm there because you just went, I don't think Stanford's going to score another run in this game. And all you got to do is just score. You could just kind of feel it. Like it was just, he had that thing, and he just has this whole postseason. It's uncanny. Whatever is happening. And I mean, the real exciting thing is that if you can win this next game and kind of move on to this next set of games, having Burns in that spot just is such a weapon. That is Burns paired with one of Tennessee's starters in almost any of the three is the best duo in college baseball. Period. But him paired with take your pick. I mean, obviously, him paired with Beam, that's an unstoppable duo. Him paired with Dolan or him paired with Lindsey. However that goes, I mean, so far it's been with Dolander, but actually the last time it was cleaning up Beam. Yeah. So it's been both. That's just absurdly good, and it's what will be tough to swallow if Tennessee cannot win this next game is that that's a College World Series winning duo. That is something that is a true competitive advantage over everybody else in this competition. And you have that. I mean, it's kind of like, Wake Forest with their hitting right now. You just look at the way they're hitting the baseball and you just go like, they're better than everybody else. LSU is close right there. And I don't know how the game's going right now. It is
it's 2-0 LSU. Wake had some adventurous moments in the outfield, which if you've watched any from the Tennessee LSU game the other night, the game starts at 6:00 Central Time. It's a weird time of day for the sun, and you saw the LSU left fielder, the sunglasses on top of his hat, not using them, looking into the sun, and all the jokes that were kind of thrown his way. And he said in an interview that it's because the ball coming out of the shadows there at that time of day, if you put the sunglasses on, it makes it even darker and harder to pick up the ball. So it's not a good situation at this time of day for the outfielders. And Wake Forest, unfortunately for them, was kind of the victim of that. It gave up 2 runs there in the second.
Come on. Yeah, you can't.
It might be third. I'm not sure.
Well,
yeah. So, and again, if you don't know, Tennessee will play the loser of the Wake Forest LSU game that's being played right now. They'll play tomorrow night.
And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Looking at the comments, Lewis says, who throws the heat tomorrow? We're going to cover that in just a minute. Tons of great comments. Let's cover some of these while we're here. Steven says, go Vols, Steven, big time. This is an interesting comment from Steven because I don't think that I've seen anybody say this, but he says, I'm tired of Tennessee fans saying if Tennessee didn't win today, then Coach Vitello needs to be fired. I don't think anybody would say that Vitello needs to be fired. That's absolutely insane. I don't know who is saying that. Yeah,
what would they do then?
Where are you going to go from 2 College World Series trips in 3 years to who?
I mean, Wake Forest is viewed as the favorite, even though they're down right now, and they haven't been to the College World Series, they said, since 1955. And Vitello's went twice in 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean that's completely insane. Now, what I have seen, and this has come from me. We were actually talking about this before when Tennessee was down 4-0. These were some of the texts that Zach and I exchanged. Was that the tough conversation that would have potentially had to be had after this, and that would get brought up by people that aren't Tennessee fans, is that Vitello would be a little bit of a choker in that big spot because he would have gone to the College World Series and been 0-4. Thankfully, that didn't happen. You win your first College World Series game in 22 years since 2001. And so done. See ya to that narrative, and that's done. That's the only thing that I've seen about Vitello. You won that game. You kind of got that monkey off your back. 22 years is forever to not do something like that. And so that's, I don't think that you can honestly overstate the job that Tony Vitello has done this season. It just, the way that this thing was falling apart. Again, to go back to that Arkansas into Vandy week, whatever that was, where you got blown out by Tennessee Tech on your own home field. It was bad. And then this man found a way to get this team to Omaha, and not just Omaha, but win a game in Omaha and potentially make it even further, depending on what happens in the next few days. And one of the great coaching jobs of the past, I mean, take your pick in terms of all Tennessee sports. You go Josh Heupel with the football team in the last 2 years, Tony Vitello now with this team. It's one of the great turnarounds that you've seen in Tennessee sports. It's insane. I mean, God. So don't fire this guy, please.
No. And Tennessee isn't just a fringe, got lucky and made it to Omaha. I know they lost that first game, but they're right in the middle of this. I mean, I know they're in the elimination bracket at this point. Margin of error is very thin, but you lost 6-3 to a team that has possibly the 2 top draft picks, in Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens. You beat a Stanford team that barely lost to Wake Forest and held Wake Forest to, I think that game was like 3-2 final. I mean, these are good games that Tennessee's been playing. The LSU game didn't go their way. They beat Stanford today. Who knows what happens after this, but Tennessee's just as much of a threat as anybody out there. I don't think there's anybody that's going to be looking forward to seeing Tennessee if they have to play them.
Absolutely not, because I think point blank period, you have the best set of pitchers in America. That's kind of been proven out. But yeah, that the hitting is real tough at times. But it's all there for this team, and man, but just so much credit to Vitello and just whatever has happened here. I
think he's a master at building chemistry and not forcing it, and kind of letting a team discover its own identity, however long that takes. I mean, last year's team, it was a continuation of 2021, basically. This year, it's like a whole new set of position players that are starting. It's a whole new vibe. I mean, I know we've talked about it a bunch, but I really do think that Vitello, just some of the comments he's made about the way he handled things early in the season, he let this team find its way instead of forcing it. I think when you force it to happen, you can push a team towards some bad habits and some things that aren't necessarily beneficial. And I think his ability to just kind of let things evolve, it's his natural. I mean, you can see he's got the emotion. He's fiery during games. We've seen him ejected. We've seen him kind of bump an umpire. We've seen that emotion come out of him, but he's also kind of got this laid back vibe at times too. And I think he knows exactly which buttons to push and when to kind of let a team be, when to get on them, the right things to say. I mean, it's what being a good coach is about. And I think Tennessee has one.
We talked about it a little last week. He's developed. And I mean, he's a grown man. You don't want to say he's like grown up necessarily, but I think he saw the consequences of everyone's actions last year and what that meant. He's toned it down. He's brought more composure. You even saw it today. He had a blow up today. And kind of played it off, ran out, got a warning, kind of played it off like he was picking grass or something. It was kind of a funny moment later in the game. And he's come out of that a little bit. And I think long-term in his career, that's big, because you don't want to be the no fun, we play the game with dignity and everyone who celebrates is bad. You don't want to be, Vandy's coach, but you don't want to let everybody fly off the handle like you did last year. Ultimately, tons of fun to watch, but ultimately bit you in the butt.
Yeah, he can't get suspensions every single year. And I think he's got a nice little streak going right now. The one that earlier this season was bizarre, and I don't think we still fully understand what that was all about totally.
Lord knows. But to
Which that
finish
feels like
off,
2 years ago now, by the way.
yeah,
February, early March feels like forever ago with all that's happened this season.
it's a totally different season altogether. Might as well have been. It's crazy. But let's just finish with a few more comments, then we'll talk about what happens after this potentially with LSU or Wake. But Justin says, "Let it burn." Talking about Chase Burns again. Mr. Jones says he can make you chase or burn it by you. It's almost Chase Burns is almost a description of Chase Burns. Chase Burns. Uh, does that make sense? That was stupid. Anyway, you get that? You get what I'm saying? Chase Burns, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. His own name is a description of what he does. Billy Jones says, go Big Orange, GBO. Thanks to everybody who's dropping in, commenting. It means a lot that you're spending your Monday night with us here. And to go from there now, let's talk about what comes next for Tennessee, because certainly it gets no easier from here. But we'll talk about LSU or Wake Forest right after I tell you about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhb.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhb.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go support them because they support us. Thanks to them. So here's what Tennessee has ahead. You go from the top pitcher in America to, what was it, leader in strikeouts, to the number 2 guy in strikeouts. And now who awaits you is either that team that has the number 1 pitcher in America. You won't face him again, but still they have a ridiculous batting lineup. Or you face Wake, who has just kind of murdered everybody up to this point. Although had a time, they were behind in that opening game, weren't they? And then came from
Stanford,
behind.
It was 2-1 for much of the game.
Yeah, it came from behind, ended up pulling out that game against Stanford. But you have, I mean, you're in the murder bracket. You're in the best part of the bracket, and it just is. It's stupid that they did it that way, but it's the way that they did it. And so that's what awaits you. But here's what I would ask you, Zach: who do you want in this next game, and why? And how does Tennessee do in that game?
Yeah, I really don't know. I feel like maybe LSU would be the better option for Tennessee, because I think, and this goes both ways, there's just familiarity there. I mean, they've played each other 4 times now. It won't be Skeens. It'll be their number 3 guy. It's Drew Beam. You kind of like the mentality that he pitches with in these big games. With Wake, they have a really good number 3 starter. That's, I think, probably better than their number 2 starter. It's kind of weird the way they work their starters out for this College World Series. But and the bats, I mean, yeah, they're having a tough time right now so far against LSU, but they've been the most consistent with the bat for the most part. I mean, they put up 22 or something in that last game against Alabama. So my gut says that LSU would be the better option. I think my biggest concern really is what can you get from Chase Burns tomorrow night after he threw 75 pitches over 6 innings, which is not a bad number. Like, that's a pretty reasonable number for 6 innings. He was efficient, not a lot of high stress innings. I mean, it's a lot different than even if he pitched 5 innings or 4 innings. 75 pitches is not the same as 6 innings with 75 pitches. So what do you get out of him? How many innings can he give you if you need him late in the game? I'm sure he'll be willing to do whatever at this point of the year. It seems like all these kids are. To me, that's probably what the game will come down to tomorrow night, regardless of who it's against. But I think I'd rather than play LSU.
I agree. If for no other reason than I want them to end LSU season, it would just, what a joy that would be. And you can't do that unless you play them. It's not looking good so far. Maybe Wake, and maybe Wake is beatable. And then
good news right now, as we're kind of talking about this live while the Wake LSU game is going on, is that their starter right now is at 70 pitches in the 4th inning for Wake, and they're getting some bullpen action going already. Oh. So, and you mentioned this to me, I think, before the show, that if you can get in if these teams get into their bullpens and the team that loses has to go through a bunch of relievers. I mean, that's automatically an advantage for Tennessee tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So if this score holds, you kind of like what's going on there for Wake Forest.
Yeah, the ideal situation for whoever Tennessee plays tomorrow. I mean, the ideal situation was that
it's 13-12 final and every relief pitcher's used.
Exactly. 13 to 12
innings.
final in 18 innings, and every pitcher from both teams is absolutely gassed, and then you play whoever is the loser of that. That would be ideal, no doubt about it. It's banking on the fact that is almost certainly not going to happen. I think you just gotta hope that no matter how it goes, the losing team is stretched. And it sounds like if it's going to end up being Wake, that's already kind of happening. And that's good. Burn some of those dudes in the bullpen because you have that depth. Because even you look at what Tennessee has used so far, it's not like they've gone super deep. And they haven't just had some blowout game where they used absolutely everybody. I mean, Chase Burns was totally locked down. You didn't have to go anywhere other than to him today. And so, Camden Sewell, Kirby Cannell, like you got option. Well, it goes even beyond Aaron Combs. You got options.
Yeah, and those guys haven't pitched. Combs and they haven't pitched in what I know. Combs pitched Saturday. Was that
he had another one batter outing? I believe.
Yeah, that's what it was. It worked out perfect for Tony Vitello.
Man, and Tony's pitching choices have really, obviously, just because his dudes have been excellent. I mean, his pitching choices have just looked great so far in the postseason. But yeah, the ideal situation is whoever you're playing is in a late game. That's already to your advantage. They have to play later after you already played. You get a few hours extra rest, and you just potentially, you didn't use arms like they maybe will, and that plays to your advantage. I want it to be LSU because I want to end LSU season. I want to see Jay Johnson cry. This dude's annoying, and I don't like it. LSU, they're kind of the Kentucky basketball of baseball. They think that they created this sport, and it was fun a couple of years ago to smash their head in to make it to the College World Series, and I want to do that again, except in the College World Series this time. It would be fun. And so hopefully you get that chance. It looks like it might be Wake here, and I can't tell the future. I wish I could to predict.
Yeah, a lot of game left still.
Oh yeah. I mean, if Tennessee tells you anything, Lord knows a 2-0 lead isn't foolproof. So we'll see what happens, and maybe have a little midweek segment this week. Come back with a little extra work for us. I don't know, depending on how things go for Tennessee. Me and Zach will talk about it, but regardless, I'll put it this way: just give me a team and give me another shot in the College World Series, and that's what Tennessee has. Like that's all I wanted out of today, was just another chance, and Tennessee is still alive, and that's what counts. Will they win? I don't know. I'm still living off the shine of the fact that I called Tennessee making the College World Series 3 weeks ago. And I'm still just endlessly patting myself on the back for that one. What a great prediction by me. But still, I hope Tennessee can do it, but it's not like either of these are going to be any kind of easy out.
No, I mean, definitely not. I think you came here and you won a game. That's not the goal. The goal is to win it all, but you absolutely could not go 0-2. Kind of like you talked about earlier about the choking conversation. You got it. Yeah, they did that monkey off your back no matter what. And they were able to do that. Maybe that kind of springs them into this magical run that we never forget. I mean, you never know when one of those is about to start. And maybe, being down 4-0 today, maybe that started it. Maybe that is something they'll live off of for the next week, and they'll bring that trophy back to Tennessee.
I mean, the thing is that your bats are working better than they have for most of the season right now. You were hitting all over the kid today. And you have guys like Blake Burke, who has down the stretch of the season just had a horrific go of it, has just really, really struggled. And he had a really good game today. Maui Ahuna had a really good game hitting the ball today. And so you have some of these dudes that have had tough seasons at the plate suddenly hitting the ball well. And I mean, is that not the formula? You have the best bullpen in America, and then suddenly dudes that weren't having, a great year hitting are hitting the baseball. Is that not the formula to win? And so we'll see. Can they do it? I'm not sure, but I hope they do, and I hope it's against LSU. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be shameful with that one.
Are you Are you worried, before we move on, are you worried that Tony Vitello gave LSU some bulletin board material after the game today?
I mean, it's going to be bulletin board material. It's the College World Series. If being there is not the bulletin board material that you need, then how'd you even get there in the first place? I'd
That's
kind of put it
fair.
that
That's
way.
fair. Yeah.
It's all
I mean, and
motivation.
if you don't know what we're talking about, Vitello said after the game that he thinks Chase Burns is probably the best pitcher in the College World Series, and he acknowledged that he knows that Tennessee faced Paul Skeens a couple of nights ago. So
Oof.
it'd be interesting to see how that kind of is spread throughout the LSU locker room, because if Tennessee's going to advance to the championship, they're going to have to play LSU again no matter what.
Yep.
And I don't know how if Skeens would consider pitching on short rest if a game is played Wednesday. I think that if Tennessee plays Wake Forest tomorrow night, then they'd have to play LSU. If they win that game, they'd have to play LSU, I believe, Wednesday. That would be 4 days of rest. That would be short rest for Skeens. Would he give it another go? I mean, I don't know. I think that's a situation where you don't hate it if he does, because usually pitchers are never as good on short rest.
Yeah.
I know he's a young guy, but that's, he's a workhorse too, and throwing over 100 pitches at every start.
And he got a little worn down. He got a little worn down at the end of that game against Tennessee. So,
and seeing a guy again that quickly is an advantage for the hitter. I mean, he's still great. Yeah. I'm not saying that they're going to go out there and score 6 runs off of him, because it's the second time they've seen him in a few days, but it would be a little advantage for the hitters.
You never know what's going to happen in that scenario. So time will tell. We'll see who they're playing tomorrow. Like I said, maybe a little midweek segments in our future here, Zach. We'll just have to feel it out. Well, game time decision. Yeah. But I think that's gonna be it for baseball talk. We'll leave it there and just kind of see what happens, because there was some other, actually during the LSU game, the loss to LSU, there was some very good news for Tennessee football, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, right after I tell you about Rattle and Snap Tennessee whiskey. Nothing goes better with a Tennessee sports victory like this one today over Stanford than an awesome whiskey. And I'm talking specifically about Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Log Still Distillery has released a Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There's a 4-year and an 8-year version of Rattle and Snap. You can see the 4-year version right there in the corner of the YouTube video if you're watching. It's a beautiful, beautiful bottle. I've had both the 4 and the 8-year versions. They're both amazing. They go great in cocktails. They're great neat. I mean, just get your hands on a bottle because they're really excellent. And I mean, as you can see from the bottle there, stuff looks great on a shelf too. It's beautiful. You can find Rattle and Snap in stores across Tennessee. It's also available in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. So run, don't walk, and go get yourself some Rattle and Snap whiskey for those Tennessee sports victories, because maybe there'll be a few more here in the next few days. We will see. All righty. So it was the middle of that LSU game, and if I'm actually remembering correctly, because it was it sort of acted as something that made me feel better, as Tennessee wasn't having the easiest time against LSU. LSU hit a home run, and then 2 minutes after, maybe right at the same time, 4-star athlete Boo Carter announces that he is committed to Tennessee. He was at, I believe, the 40-40 Club in Manhattan, New York, which is I went there last year and stayed at a hotel.
Let's say, have you been there? Have you been there?
I have not been there, but we stayed in a hotel that was on the same street.
Is it like Midtown area?
Club. Yeah, it's Chelsea-ish, actually.
Okay.
If he's at that one, I think there are multiples of them.
Probably.
But it's like a real swanky sports bar, and is it like a nightclub? I don't know. I'm not cool enough to go to a place like that, frankly, because I think it's owned by like Drake and Jay-Z. I'm not going to a place that Drake and Jay-Z own. Let's be honest. Look at me.
You're not on the list.
Yeah. The short, weird guy that's never been to a cool nightclub in his life. Yeah, they're not letting me in. But anyway, so with this pickup, it served as a nice, thank goodness there's something to feel good about tonight during that LSU game. But in reality, this is amazing for Tennessee football. Because Boo Carter, we talked last week, there was a little bit of concern. He went to Michigan last week and clearly had a good time, but then came right back and visited Tennessee again, and then ultimately chose Tennessee in his actual decision there. And it was actually funny. He tweeted something, a graphic before he did that. It was like, my announcement's coming, and it's choosing between Michigan, Tennessee, and somebody else. But actually, in the picture, he was doing the Vols sign, like the this, and it was like, okay, well, we know what this dude is gonna do. He pretty much gave it away right there in the pregame graphic. But what'd you think about this pickup, Zach? Because it felt like you're on a little bit of shaky ground with recruiting there, and then you get a nice pickup.
Yeah, I think Tennessee needed this one. Not that they've had like any like bad recruiting luck lately, but there's just been some things trending, and not really Tennessee's fault. It's just kind of been the way the official visits have fell. Anytime a kid goes on an official visit for the first time and it's their first official visit, usually that's their leader because it's the first time they've experienced an official visit, which is the red carpet. It's different than the unofficial visits or just showing up to kind of check a school out. A lot of times that leads to, a specific team being their leader, or it's the most recent school they visited. So it can just kind of be bad luck when you see some of these crystal ball predictions or so-and-so's trending towards this program at this point. It's not always super accurate. But I think Tennessee needed this commitment to kind of stave off some of those headlines and narratives. And Boo Carter was a guy that you felt like needed to end up at Tennessee, would end up at Tennessee, but then all this Michigan talk kind of popped up over the last couple of weeks, and maybe that was just Boo Carter adding some intrigue to his commitment so people wouldn't know for sure where he was going. I mean, obviously he wanted to make it a big deal. You go commit in Manhattan. I mean, you don't do that usually unless you're the number one dual threat quarterback in the country. I mean, typically that's reserved for those types of guys. Hopefully people get that joke. But yeah, it's a big pickup. He can play both ways. Hopefully he's going to play defensive back at Tennessee. I think Josh Heupel is going to let him do some offense as well, depending on how that shakes out and what he can pick up and how he can help the team. I think he wants to do that. He wants to be a two-way player that plays on both sides of the ball, but primarily going to be a defensive back for Tennessee.
Yeah, and if that really does come to fruition, like everyone is sort of assuming, just picking up dudes on offense, we say it, or on defense, we say it every single time. I mean, that's just so massive. Just with Tennessee, the way that this defense has looked, you need the help very, very badly. So was very happy to see that. But it's really the overarching thing here was just the optics of if you had lost out on Boo Carter and just kind of the hit that your in-state pipeline potentially would have taken there. And then not only did that not happen, but now you get a kid that I think is going to be a really good advocate for your class and is really, it seems like pretty passionate about coming to Tennessee. So that's really nice to see. I think he's going to be a big help to this team. I love it. And then there was a little bit more recruiting news, but before we finish it out, I do want to shout out Evan White here. He says, "Hello again, my dearest friends." Evan, yeah, it's been a while, man. He's been a regular listener in the past, and specifically with me and Crompton's Game Day Show. What's up, man? Glad that you're popping back in. And I got to say this every time somebody says this in the comments. He said, "GPO, go Vols." Evan, happy to have you back in the comments. But another piece of recruiting news that came down is not a commitment, but a pretty fun little tidbit here. So Kamarion Franklin was another one last week that was kind of on the list of like, he's been showing some stuff where I don't know how he's feeling about Tennessee. Is he feeling as high on Tennessee as he was before? Don't know. And then this week, he goes and he visits Tennessee and is tweeting 100 different ways about how much he loves Tennessee and how it was a great visit. And then he turns right around and cancels his visit to LSU. He was supposed to go visit LSU, and he said, "Nope, I'm not coming." And, it's never a great decision to try to read the tea leaves on a recruiting situation when you don't actually, like, talk to the kid or anything like that. But it can be pretty telling when a kid goes on a visit and then cancels future visits. It probably means that the visit he just went on went really, really well. Do you take anything away from the tea leaves here, Zach?
I'm not enough to say, okay, yeah, Tennessee's going to land this kid, but it's kind of like that conversation we were just having about things trending the right way after visits. It's good. It's good for Tennessee. Anytime you can get a kid to, I'm not saying Tennessee pushed him to cancel the visit or anything, but anytime a kid cancels a visit after they visited you, I mean, that's a great feeling. You got to know that, hey, we're in a pretty good spot for this kid, and keep at it. We have a real chance here. It's another kid that obviously you got to start landing those kids if you want to have an elite defense. And we'll see where it goes. It's far too early, I think, to say that Tennessee's going to get him, but it's a good sign. I don't know how high up the list LSU was for him, so I don't know if it's as big of a deal as it could be, but it's one less elite program you have to worry about.
He is currently the major leader Tennessee is currently the major leader in the clubhouse for Kamarion Franklin, at least according to On3. 75% chance at the moment to land Franklin. That's pretty tenuous. Don't put too much stock in it, but it would be pretty great because you also look at the aggregate rankings here on On3. 4-star player according to On3, 5-star in 247, 5-star on Rivals, 4-star on ESPN, whatever actual weight you give to ESPN recruiting at this point. I wouldn't give it much, but
no, I'm surprised it's still a thing.
Yeah, does ESPN, do they even cover recruiting? That kind of surprises me. But it does look like Tennessee's chances there are pretty good. And this is just nice. Again, I think it shows kind of the prowess of Rodney Garner if you can land this kid, which has already, I think, been proved out, not just because I think Garner's pure coaching job with the defensive line has been excellent. But, I mean, he's known as a star recruiter, and he's just been really good at other teams and now at Tennessee, too. It just comes with territory. So I would say at this moment, I would expect to end up with Kamarion Franklin in the boat, but you never, ever know with these kids. He could take some visit to some other school and get stars in his eyes, and then suddenly he's going to wherever, Ole Miss, or because he is a Mississippi based kid, but it doesn't seem like the Mississippi schools have convinced him very, very much to go. But good recruiting tidbits, a little bit more positivity on top of the win tonight, but anything else with football before we move on to the final topic of the show, which is a recurring theme on this one, which is dunking on Nick Saban. So anything else, Zach?
No, it's been fairly quiet for the most part, which is a good thing. Hopefully it stays that way till SEC media days and when things really get going.
Agreed. We don't need any negative press around here. I don't like talking about it, and I don't want to talk about it. Let's just keep it all, the vibe's positive.
We've talked about enough of it over the last few years up until really the last year we've been doing this show is really when it's kind of
pretty much
changed everything.
Yeah, it really has been. But we'll finish
2020 was some dark times.
Yeah. Oh, that was dark times. And then, it's darkest right before the dawn. You know what I mean?
There you go. Yeah.
We made it out to the other end. Here we are. But let's finish with this. Nick Saban, does the man ever stop complaining? And we're going to talk about his latest stupid comments right after I tell you about our great friends, Superbook Sports. Bring that big bet energy this summer with Superbook Sports. Superbook Sports is the most trusted name in sports betting. And right now, use promo code A to Z, ATOZ, to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code A to Z. Simply visit superbook.com for terms and conditions, or download the Superbook Tennessee app in the App Store. Enter the promo code A to Z, and you'll get $250 courtesy of Superbook Sports. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, GAMBLER. The Superbook Sports Tennessee app. Download it right now. Now, thanks to them, support them because they support us. Nick Saban, we all hate him. He's the worst. And he just continues to be like more bitter and annoying. And it kind of feels like he feels the walls closing in a little bit. Georgia took his spot. Tennessee beat him. LSU looks like they got a pretty good coach. I think he can feel the squeeze. And now he's just lashing out. What did he have to say, Zach, if you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 6 months since the end of the college football season, or since December, I guess, ended the regular season, and he's still complaining about Alabama not getting into the college football playoff, which is hilarious because I don't know, coaches complaining about stuff that's already happened that you can't change. That kind of goes against the whole spirit of how you coach. I mean, you're supposed to have a short memory, move forward, control what you can control, and we'll play wherever we're supposed to play. And over the last, really since the last season, Saban has really turned into, I mean, he's always been a curmudgeon, right? But he's kind of going over the top with complaining constantly. We saw it last year when he did his little TV tour. Anybody that would have him on television making his pitch for Alabama to be in the playoff, like he couldn't stand the thought of being left out and Georgia being in it. And then he was complaining earlier this year about, up-tempo offenses and slowing them down and if they're safe or not. Obviously kind of directed at Tennessee a little bit there after, right after Tennessee beats them, then complaining about the conference schedule. So the fact that he's back complaining about not getting in the playoff, it just feels like he's got to be on TV or interviews, complaining about something. And you don't see anybody else really doing this right now. It's very odd. You don't see Josh Heupel in front of cameras. You don't see really Kirby Smart out there, though in Kirby Smart's case, it's probably best to lay low right now with all the legal issues happening at Georgia. They've got local media looking into it down there now, which usually doesn't end up well for a program. But it's an odd look for Saban, and I think it's kind of what you said. Like I'm not going to say that he's in panic mode and it's over and he thinks it's over, but I do think he sees Georgia, taking off, leaving Alabama behind. He sees LSU, some people picking them to win the SEC West this year after the way they kind of put it together and beat Alabama last year under Brian Kelly, a coach that's, like him or not, he usually has a pretty good team on the field that has a chance to do something in the postseason, and that's going to be a threat to Alabama. And then, of course, Tennessee, beating Alabama for the first time since Nick Saban has been the coach at Alabama. He's never been the Alabama head coach when Tennessee was a threat. That's been the one kind of sleeping giant that he hasn't had to worry about ever. And now all of a sudden he does. And I'm not saying Tennessee's the catalyst for all this complaining that he's been doing, but it kind of all does go back to Tennessee. They're the reason he wasn't in the playoff. Tennessee was the team he cited for the 9-game SEC schedule that, okay, we got to play Auburn and Tennessee. Well, Tennessee's usually not good. Now they are. It's kind of all this stuff kind of goes back to Tennessee a little bit.
It definitely felt like last year he lost the national championship to Georgia. And you go, okay, lost, but they were in the national championship. I mean, come on. They won that season.
And they lost their best player in the championship game. He had a built-in excuse.
Exactly. So, I mean, you looked at that and you were like, yeah, they're still in the national championship. They still in the SEC, yada, yada, yada. But this year, losing to Tennessee and LSU, I think it broke the dam open. Because, and obviously, specifically losing to Tennessee, because it was just so historic. It had just been so long and just was such a relief off of Tennessee.
And that scene, every time that was played, it was Alabama there walking off the field as losers. Everybody saw that over and over and over.
And I think I said this during the season. That week when Tennessee beat Alabama was a changing of the guard. And it wasn't even Tennessee taking over Alabama's spot or something like that. It was really Georgia taking over. Like it was, suddenly Alabama's not
to be beat.
Alabama's not the powerhouse anymore. And that's what ended. And I mean, Billy Jones says it here. He knows his reign is over. Exactly. That's exactly. I would read the rest of it, but this is a family show.
And you'll probably accidentally read it the wrong way.
Exactly. But it really is that. It just feels that way. And in his exact comments where he said about the college football playoff, all we do is take teams that win the most games at the end of the year and put them in the playoffs. But do we really get the best teams? When they told me that we would be favored against 3 out of the 4 teams that got into the playoff, I'm like, why aren't we in the playoffs? Because you lost to Tennessee and LSU. I don't know. Beat the teams that you were favored against. They were favored in both of those games. They were favored against Tennessee by almost double digits. I'm sorry. What happened? Beat them.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see Tennessee fans or Josh Heupel complaining about not making the playoff because they lost. I mean, if they beat South Carolina, it's a different conversation, of course. But you lost to South Carolina, that ended it, and Tennessee fans accept that for the most part. Josh Heupel's, I think, everybody in his coaching staff accepted because honestly, and I know this is debatable, and you don't want to get into this debate with somebody that is on the other side because nobody's ever going to agree. But you feel like Tennessee would have deserved it over Alabama just by virtue of beating Alabama and then beating LSU. I mean, in a way, yeah, that loss to South Carolina was bad, but it's still a conference loss on the road. It wasn't like they lost to, South Alabama or something like that, or some random, or Georgia State, a couple of years ago. It wasn't like that. So, those games do happen from time to time, but they had better wins than Alabama, and I think the better wins carry more weight than the worst losses, and that would be my opinion. But the part that doesn't make sense is I don't know what Saban is politicking for here. With the schedule, I kind of always understood it, but this year's the last year of the 14 playoff. Who knows what happens this year, especially with Alabama, new quarterback. I don't really know what to expect from them, to be honest. They could go undefeated in typical Alabama fashion, or they could finally, not win 10 games. I mean, it really could go either way at this stage of Saban's career. And he just lost probably the best quarterback he's ever had at Alabama and didn't make the playoffs. So what's going to happen in 2023? I don't know. But this argument doesn't really make sense with them moving to the 12-team playoff in 2024.
Well, I hope what it means is that Tennessee will beat Alabama again. That's all I know. And then this time,
Tuscaloosa.
Well, it is a bit of a different task in that way, but
maybe Tennessee fans will storm that field too.
Well, maybe, or maybe you could flip it. Even if you drop that game, beat South Carolina and beat Georgia this year. Just flip your two losses.
Yeah.
Hey, fine. That's all I ask, is to just have a nearly perfect season. Is that big of an ask?
We haven't actually asked for that in a while, so maybe not.
Hey, it's not like I'm asking you every single year to do that. Okay. Charles, Zach Reagan. I think that's it. Anything else for the good folks at home, Zach, before we bounce?
I can't. I'm just showing Paul Steen's mustache here, and I can appreciate a good mustache, but that is one that I don't think it works. I just don't. I don't feel like it's the right move for him.
Yeah, we were saying before we got on here, he's a goofy dude. I don't know. It's just something. It's just like off. There's something about him is off.
Yeah, he's an odd character. And I don't know him that way. I haven't kept up with him all year, so maybe in interviews he's a lot different than we're perceiving him. But just from watching him on the mound, it wasn't like I hate this guy, but it was like, this guy just seems, like you said, just kind of off.
Yeah. What's his deal?
Yes. What's his deal? That's the perfect.
What is this guy's deal? Well, hopefully we can just knock him out in this next game. Wake Forest has a little work to do for that to happen, but hopefully we can. And then, we don't have to wonder anymore of what Skeens' deal is.
There you go.
All right. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. That has been the Big Orange Podcast, the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Go to AtoZSports.com, read everything that Zach writes. The dude is over there just pumping out more content than, he probably really should, frankly. He's just going above and beyond. It's the middle of the summer, and he's still just so much stuff that he's putting up on the website. But thank you for listening, for commenting. It seriously means the world. We appreciate it every single week. And maybe, as I said, depending on what happens with the games this week, we're going to feel out maybe a midweek segment if there's enough to talk about. So maybe we'll put that together. So look out for that on the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. Other than that, I think that's it. Thanks for watching again, and we'll talk to y'all maybe later this week, maybe next week.
See you guys later.